Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. 15 months into the pandemic, one thing is absolutely clear. Perhaps one of the best ways of checking the spread of the virus is constant and widespread testing. So, as India's second surge starts to wane, and the government prepares itself for what many believe is likely to be an inevitable third wave, we have a couple of critical questions to ask about India's testing. First, how widespread and equally importantly, how honest is India's testing? Secondly, is the government's new testing policy a step forward or is it, as some people believe, a sad step backwards? And thirdly, does it prepare us to handle the third wave when it comes or could it leave us undefended? Those are the critical questions I should put today to one of India's foremost health economists, Professor at Rajagiri College of Social Science in Kochi, Rijo M. John. Professor John, you have several serious problems with the way testing has been conducted in India, and I want to raise several of them one by one. But first, the quantum of testing. A few days ago, the government proudly announced that during the second wave, it had increased testing 2.6 times. You point out, given the enormous size of the second wave, this is grossly inadequate. Can you start by explaining why you say this?
Thank you, Karan, for having me on your show. Let me answer those in basically in two parts. First about the quantum of the testing itself, and then why it is grossly inadequate. I'm actually not very sure what is the time frame that the government is using when they say that the testing has actually gone up by 2.6 times. When I look at this data that I have, I want to compare the testing that prevailed during the peak of the first wave versus the testing that prevailed, daily testing that prevailed during the peak of the second wave. And I see that there has only been an increase of 55%. It actually increased from 1.1 million during the previous peak to 1.7 million during the current peak. That's just a 55% increase. Now, if you want to actually compare against the testing that happened towards the end of the first wave that happened in, say, February this year, against the kind of testing that happened during the peak of this wave, of course, you might see a two to three times increase, but I don't believe that's a fair comparison to make. So that sort of answers the first part of the question. And towards the second part, I must say that this testing is highly inadequate for India because, if you want to see it like this, during the first wave, our test positivity rate was around 8%, 8 to 9% range, and it has gone up to more than 20% in this wave. And that actually shows, a large number of detected cases out there. We couldn't detect a lot of cases because we were not doing testing enough. In fact, on a per million basis, India's testing is actually lagging behind that of 112 countries out there. So on the one hand, you have WHO recommending that we have to have a test positivity rate of 5%. And then we were looking at test positivity rate of more than 22% during this. And that shows how highly inadequate the testing has been, especially in this second wave.
Now, something else that you pointed out when I was talking to you on the phone is that cases in the second wave had increased more than fourfold compared to the first. Even if you accept the government's questionable claim that testing has gone up 2.6 times, that's nowhere near adequate for a fourfold increase in tests. So even if the government's claim of 2.6 is to be accepted, it's still hugely short of the fourfold increase in cases.
That's right. We've seen a fourfold increase in cases, whereas the testing on a corresponding time frame has increased only by about 55%. So it continues to be highly inadequate, in my opinion.
Now, in an article that you wrote recently for The Hindu on the 16th of May, you said, and I'm quoting you, the growth of testing should far outpace the growth in cases in order to be ahead of the epidemic curve rather than chasing it. So what you're now saying about the true levels of testing means that at no point during the second wave, which mercifully is waning, were we ever ahead of the curve. At all times during the second wave, we were behind the curve. We were chasing the virus. The virus was always ahead of us.
That's right. In fact, till about the third week of March, our testing growth was slightly better than the case growth. But of course, that was very early stage of the second wave. But as soon as the second wave really started taking shape in many part of the country, by towards the third week of March, our testing, the growth of the testing has gone way below that of the daily cases. So, for example, towards the peak of this second wave, the daily cases were growing at a speed 4 times higher than the speed of growth of daily testing, and that really shows how inadequate the testing is on the one hand, and also this also partly explains why you know how many of those epidemiological models predicted that India would be reporting close to 1 million daily cases at the peak of this wave, which was expected to have happened during the mid May. But then we ended up reporting only 400,000 cases towards the peak, and that level of underreporting obviously happened because of highly inadequate testing. And when this testing is so highly inadequate, it actually contributes to accelerating the spread of the virus itself, because you'll have many untested infected persons who may be unknowingly infecting other people out there.
Now, this confusion about the actual amount of testing and this claim that we are increasing testing by 2.6 times, whereas in fact you say it's only increased by 55%, is compounded further by something that Balram Bhargava, the head of the ICMR, said on the 11th of May. He said India's total testing capacity is 3.3 million tests a day. But as you know better than me, the highest we've ever got to was 2.3 million, which is not even 70% of what Mr. Bhargava claims is our total testing capacity. So explain this to me. When we have, as Bhargava claims, a capacity to test 3.3 million a day, and when we have a need to do it, why are we not reaching that level?
Well, first of all, I don't even know which, there are multiple claims on testing capacity in the public domain. Starting from Dr. Harshvardhan, on 8th of May, Dr. Vardhan said that our testing capacity was 2.5 million per day, But on 11th, as you rightly said, Dr. Bhargava said that we have a testing capacity of 3.3 million. But then again, on 20th of May, Dr. Bhargava said our testing capacity was 2.9 million. So, depending on which claim on capacity that you are looking at, you can say that, yeah, we're not doing it fully, or what is the extent of underutilization of this capacity. So that's one problem. And then also we need to see that all these claims on capacity were happening after the May 5th, when the second wave seemed to have peaked. Till then, the only thing that was available in the public domain was a testing capacity level of close to 1.5 million. And I believe we were almost fully utilizing it.
Now, you're saying something very important and interesting. I'm underlining it for the audience, that at different times, different people who should know have made different claims about India's total testing capacity. On the 8th of May, the Minister Harshvardhan said we had a capacity of 2.5 million a day. 3 days later, on the 11th, Balram Bhargava, the head of ICMR, upped it to 3.3 million. And then surprisingly, 9 days later, Balram Bhargava on the 20th reduced it to 2.9 million, as a result of which we have confusion created by people who should know about what is India's total testing capacity. Different people have said different things, and that includes the minister as well as the head of ICMR. Now, let me put this to you, and this perhaps will add to the confusion. The government has recently announced that by the end of June, that is roughly 5 weeks from now, the total testing capacity will increase to 4.5 million a day. First of all, do you believe that is likely to happen? Because it means we have to jump in 5 weeks from roughly 2 million a day at the moment to 4.5 million. That's almost 100% increase. Do you believe it can happen?
Well, it took us almost a year and a half to reach this 2 million a day capacity. And you're telling me that it will be increased by another 2.5 million in the next 1.5 months. Well, I can believe it. But my question is, and if you can really if it's that simple, then why didn't you do this already, before the pandemic second wave actually hit us? It could have been done much earlier if it was that simple. So I don't know whether to believe it. I mean, I have to see to believe it, to be frank.
Now, the second catch, the government says, is although the total number of tests will grow to 4.5 million a day by the end of June, the share between RT-PCR and antigen are going to alter and alter significantly. RT-PCR, which is the gold standard and is presently 60% of testing, actually, the government wanted it to go up to 70-75% of testing, but leave that aside, is going to come down to 40%. Meanwhile, antigen tests, which are less reliable, which are presently said to be 40%, will go up to 60%. So there'll be an exact reversal almost of the balance and share between RT-PCR and antigen. How do you view that?
Well, first of all, I do not know where the 60% RT-PCR share comes from, but based on the data that is available in the public domain, including what ICMR maintains, I see that the total share of RT-PCR so far from the beginning of the pandemic has only been 49%, actually 48.7% to be precise. So if you're telling me that you're going to reduce that share of RT-PCR down from 49% to say 40%, but after doubling or more than doubling the existing testing capacity to 4.5 million, I'm actually all for it. I would take that, because you're only reducing the share of RT-PCR to 40%. But when actually you increase the testing capacity to 4.5 million, in effect, you're actually getting many more RT-PCR than what you're currently having. On top of it, you're getting much more rapid antigen tests too. And that's definitely a welcome thing if it were to happen like that.
So the critical thing for you is that the government must succeed in doubling the testing capacity from roughly 2 million a day, which is what it is today, to 4.5. If they succeed in doing that, and you've already earlier expressed your doubt about whether they will, but if they succeed in doing it, it doesn't matter to you whether the share of RT-PCR diminishes and the share of antigen goes up. And the reason it doesn't matter to you is because you believe anyway, regardless of what ICMR may claim at press conferences, the actual share of RT-PCR is just about 49%. If it comes down to 40, that's not a big loss. And anyway, if it is 40% of the increased 4.5 million, it will be a lot more RT-PCR than is being done at the moment. So the whole thing hinges on the government's capacity to succeed in increasing tests to 4.5 million. Is that right?
That's right.
Let me then at this point put to you a criticism people have made and ask how you respond to it. Many people say, no doubt it's a good thing that the total number of tests will increase from 2 to 4.5 million. But at the same time, the total number of unreliable tests will also go up. And the criticism is this looks like one step forward, one step back, and not really an advance. How do you respond to that?
Well, not exactly that. Actually, let me put it this way very simply. RT-PCR is actually relatively more accurate for identifying both positives and negatives. And I'm just talking in very simple layman's language here. Whereas the rapid antigen test is actually more accurate. It most accurately identifies positive cases, especially those positive cases which are having high viral load. So in other words, if the rat actually shows that there is a positive result, you don't have to do a retest. But if it actually shows a negative result, you have to do a retest with RT-PCR. That has been the recommendation that ICMR has made. But now you have to also remember that the rat or antigen tests are so much faster and so much cheaper, okay, compared to an RT-PCR, which typically take much longer time and also more costly. So, from when you actually increase the testing capacity or double the testing capacity by reducing the share of the RT-PCR a little bit from 49% to 40%, as we just now discussed, I believe the overall package right there at that 44.5 million, this actually turns out to be more beneficial from an economic perspective, because you're actually bringing down the testing cost per detected cases. Okay. And mind you, there are already a lot of states out there. I mean, in fact, not a lot actually. There are at least 3-4 states like say Telangana, Bihar, and Odisha, which are already relying 80% or more on antigen tests. Whereas on the other extreme, you have states like Tamil Nadu and Rajasthan, which are almost exclusively 100% relying on RT-PCR. So I in fact, I'm of the person who believe that both these approaches are wrong. And in fact, one should actually be doing a right mix of both RT-PCR and antigen testing to be more effective and more cost effective, I would say.
And what determines the nature of the balance between RT-PCR and antigen are the two factors you mentioned. A, you ensure cost effectiveness, which is important for a country like India, and B, the speed with which the result is obtained. And therefore, because both of these are important concerns, you don't take seriously the criticism that this is one step forward, one step back. You're quite happy, but for you, the most important thing is the government must succeed in doubling the total number of tests from 2 million to 4.5 by the end of June. That is an area where you already have expressed doubt. You'd like to be proven wrong, but it is hard to believe that the government can achieve in 5 weeks a doubling of a figure that they took a year and a quarter to reach in the first place. Let's see whether they succeed or not. Let me then come at this point to a second concern that you have. And this is something audiences are not even aware of. You've pointed out that if you look at the quantum of tests states individually claim to have done, it adds up to a figure that is much higher than the aggregate figure put out by the ICMR. And if I recall correctly from what you've told me, you say that since January this year, that is roughly 5.5 months, states claim to have done 20 million more tests than the ICMR actually acknowledges. How do you explain this?
That's right. In fact, as of today, the difference is about 21 million between what reported by states and ICMR. And the last year in 2020, that difference was around 12 million. So it has gone up much higher this year. So in total, from the beginning of the pandemic, the discrepancy has been 33 million, which means the states are claiming that they have done 33 million tests more than what ICMR has reported nationally. That's a huge difference there. But now, what actually explains this? There can be many factors. I can only hazard some guesses here. One is that ICMR may be reporting only those tests that are done at their own accredited labs, and states are actually doing tests in non-accredited labs. And hence those are not being reported to ICMR. But I don't know how good or bad it is to do these tests in a non-accredited lab. I'm not expert enough to comment on that. But that could be one reason. Another reason that I can imagine is that there may be an incentive for the states to actually inflate the testing numbers, to deliberately show that they have done much more testing. Of course, it helps them show a very good positivity rate, test positivity rate on paper, But again, as I mentioned, this is just my guesses. But unless and until ICMR actually releases statewide testing numbers that are reported to them, I have no way of comparing. By looking at each state bulletin, I can say then which state I can try to reconcile these numbers and say which state is actually over reporting or inflating these numbers. But then without these data, it's really difficult to take guesses. But of course, there are other ways to figure out, if there are manipulations, etc.
Let me stop you there, because one of the important things you said in that answer is your suspicion that some states may be inflating their testing numbers to actually bring down their positivity rate. And this links up with your third concern about testing. You point out that in some states, I think you mentioned UP and Bihar in particular, a very high level of testing is done in areas where cases are small, and a comparatively lower level of testing is done in areas where cases are growing. And clearly that is being done to manipulate the test positivity rate and falsely show that it is lower than what it actually is. Now, isn't that dishonesty?
Well, yes, it is dishonesty. I mean, if it is actually true. But
don't you raise the question if it's actually true. You're the one who told me this is happening.
Yeah, well, let me come to that actually, because the reason being why I said it like that, because in 2020 all the states used to report testing data by districts. This was publicly available for us to calculate. But from 2021 onwards, almost all the states have stopped reporting district-wise testing data. Okay, so when you have availability of district-wise testing data, analysts like me can look at it and examine whether there are obvious inconsistencies. So what with the available testing data in 2020, I have been able to calculate and see how there is obvious inconsistencies, especially as I mentioned, for Bihar and the UP, I have observed these two states had this extreme inconsistency when I looked through this district-wise data. See, for Bihar, for UP, for example, Lucknow, which is the biggest city there, had 13% share of all the cases reported in UP last year. Lucknow alone contributed 13% of all the cases reported in UP, whereas the Lucknow had only done 4.9% of all the tests done in UP. So, which means you have a district which has high level of incidence of cases, but you are doing much less testing in that place. On the other hand, there is this district called Bijnor in UP, which reported only 0.7% of all the cases reported in UP, and yet they did more than 10% of all the tests done in UP that year. That's a huge problem for me, actually, because on the one hand you have a district which is showing high incidence and you're doing less tests there, which means you will actually identify lesser cases from that place, and you're doing many more tests in a place where the cases are not really happening. So you have the benefit of reducing your numerator on the one hand, numerator being the case count, and you have the benefit of increasing the denominator, which is the testing count. So you end up having a low test positivity rate. A similar example can also be found in Bihar, wherein much of the cases, almost close to 19% or more of the cases came from Patna, whereas only 3.6% of the tests were done in Patna. On the other hand, you have Aurangabad, which only contributed 2% of the cases, yet did 12% plus of the total test in Bihar. So these kind of discrepancies are so obvious, and it makes me believe that this really inflate the testing numbers, or it in fact really shows you have a very good low positivity rate on paper. And to Bihar's case is actually more interesting. I'll tell you a very interesting data which I actually examined 2 days back. ICMR actually reports there are only 66 labs in Bihar. A total 66 labs are available in Bihar. Okay. Now Bihar has actually reported 29 million tests so far from the beginning of the pandemic, and that's almost like if you take an average, it's 4.5 lakh tests per lab so far. And that if you it has been a year and a half into the pandemic, and if you exclude Sundays, you're talking about more than 1,200 daily testing in each of those labs all these days. If I were to simply assume that there is a 8-hour working time for a lab, you're actually talking about 150 tests being done per hour, or 2.5 tests done every minute in each of these labs for the last 1 year. That's so unbelievable for me. I mean, even the rapid antigen test takes about 30 minutes. So, need I say more? I mean, I think that makes the point right there.
You're saying two very important things, and I'm only briefly repeating them so that the audience remembers them, because I think they are critical. You have proven that both in UP, where the two studies were Bijnor versus Lucknow, and Bihar, where the two were Aurangabad versus Patna, these are instances where state governments are deliberately testing more in areas where cases are low and testing less in areas where cases are high. And as a result, they are manipulating the test positivity rate and falsely making it look lower than it is. And this is a deliberate attempt, not just at manipulation, but what I call dishonesty. Because what emerges as the test positivity rate is not the true test positivity rate, because you've engineered your testing to make it look lower than it is. And then the second thing you said is even more important. Bihar claims to have done 29 million tests in 66 labs, which amounts to 4.9 million per lab. And if you...
4.5.
4.5. 4.5 million per lab. And if you
Sorry, 4.5 lakh tests per lab. That amounts to 4.5 lakh tests per lab, not
not
million.
4.5 million, but 4.5 lakh tests per lab. And that amounts to, if you exclude Sundays, 1,200 tests per day. It amounts to 150 per hour. It amounts to 2.5 per minute. And I'll pause there because you're smiling, and that smile reveals to the audience you don't believe these figures. It is almost impossible because, as you said, even a rapid antigen test takes 30 minutes. How on earth do you do 2.5 per minute? Let me then, against this background, put to you the question I put in the introduction. How honest is India's testing? We now know that there are inflated, unbelievable claims from Bihar about the quantum of testing. We know that in Bihar and UP, there are deliberate attempts to fudge and make the test positivity rate lower than it is. So, how honest is India's testing?
Well, I think the data actually speaks for itself. One of the major problem is that when ICMR reports a certain number of tests and states report another number of tests, unfortunately, the test positivity rate that is reported by Ministry of Health at the national level is not a true representation of the test positivity rate that is actually there in many states, because these testing numbers vary so widely, But I believe, actually the problem here is that unfortunately we have a...
Mr. John, I'm stopping you. Don't be political, don't be diplomatic. I want you to be honest. You've given me several instances to question the honesty of India's testing. So I'm asking you now, how honest is it? Tell me, is it honest or is it dishonest or is it not believable?
Well, Karan, see, this is what the data tells me. Okay, I mean, I think from looking at the data, I believe it is not practically possible, and I believe it amounts to manipulation. That's what the data tells me. But I don't have any ground real data to actually substantiate. But what the data that I have in front of me says this. Yes, it is manipulation, in my opinion.
It's manipulation. Is it also dishonesty?
Well, if you want to say it, yeah, I mean, it is dishonest. I mean, I can say that it is dishonest. But, the problem here is that, I'll tell you why the states may be doing it. I mean, I have tried to argue myself, why this could be happening. Why are they being dishonest here, or why there is some manipulation here? The problem is that unfortunately we have a system that actually rewards good outcomes based on what is shown on the paper. If you actually look at the 2021 economic survey by the Ministry of Finance, 2021 economic survey, it had actually ranked states for their management of COVID-19 using a metric that was measured as actual cases versus naturally expected cases. So unsurprisingly, states like Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, Bihar, and Telangana were at the top of that chart. In fact, the economic survey wrote on page 23, and I quote, "States like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar have managed the pandemic well." This is the statement from the economic survey 2021, page number 23. So we have a system that actually incentivizes reporting of good outcomes on paper. What happens on the ground can be quite far from the truth.
Absolutely. And it's because of this system of categorizing and rewarding states that there is an incentive on behalf of the states to actually manipulate. And as you said, the end result is dishonest. You've agreed with me, this is dishonesty. We're coming to the end of this interview. Very briefly, I want to ask you about the critical relationship between honest and effective testing and India's hopes of being able to either prevent a third wave or reduce the size of the third wave, assuming there is a third wave. I'm going to quote from what you wrote in your recent Hindu article. You said, early detection and isolation of potentially infectious individuals are the keys to successfully fighting a viral pandemic. A widely deployed and efficient testing strategy can go a long way in limiting the spread of new cases. Doesn't that mean that even when the second wave has subsided and receded, we need to ensure that testing remains large, and effective.
Absolutely, absolutely. The importance of continued testing can never be overstated, at least until we are able to vaccinate 80% of the population, we must do periodic testing among its general population, even when there are no obvious symptoms. In fact, scaling up of regularly much relatively cheaper RT antigen test can actually become quite handy for this very purpose. In fact, this can actually detect early outbreak and reduce transmission, even if such tests are less reliable. So I believe India's plan to actually expand testing capacity to 4.4 million is extremely welcome. And I hope the government actually is able to do that and then use these infrastructure to regularly monitor or even do periodic testing in the population. In fact, even not even.
Can I stop you there? It's not
Yeah.
just that you have raised serious questions about whether India can ramp up its level of testing from the present 2 million to 4.5 million. The bigger
Mhm.
question is this: after the second wave subsides and the test positivity ratio falls below the 5% marker of the WHO, testing will lose its importance. And at that point, governments take their eye off the testing ball. Yet that is what you're saying must not happen. You're saying even after
Yes.
the second wave subsides, high levels of testing at 3 and 4 million a day need to continue. Otherwise, you'll never identify the beginnings of the third wave. And if it happens, it would swamp and drown you again. How do you ensure that when test positive falls below 5, the government doesn't take its eye off the ball and continues to test at 3 and 4 million tests a day?
Well, that's right. In fact, India had reduced the daily testing from our peak of the first wave from 1.1 million all the way down to just 6 lakhs or so towards the early part of February. And of course, even private testing labs, as you mentioned, might see they might even wind up operations for seeing a major fall in demand for testing. And I believe, this is why it's important to have more widely deployed network of operational labs in the public sector, across the length and breadth of the country. And the public sector should actively, or the government should be actively invested in testing population at periodic intervals, for this very same reason, that they should be able to detect outbreaks early on.
Can I stop you?
And this
Can
should,
I stop you? You're saying what the government should do. We know what the government should do. You said it earlier.
yeah,
I'm saying, how do
yeah.
you overcome the fact that when testing levels, when positivity rates fall below 5%, the government will not test at 3 and 4 million a day? How do we ensure it does? How do you put pressure on ministers to say, don't take your eye off the ball just because you think test positivity has fallen below 5%?
Well, we must take the lessons from other countries, and we should know that any delays in detection can contribute to rapid growth of the pandemic, and it can prove to be extremely costly, just as we have witnessed in this current wave. And we have examples of countries which have been efficient at testing, been able to control the pandemic in much better. So I think those are the lessons that the government should be keeping in mind, and not drop guard on massive testing at higher scales.
Okay, that's a very clear answer. Look at other countries, learn from them. However, when it came to the second wave, we convinced ourselves we were exceptional and special. We would not have a second wave, even though other countries did, and their second wave was worse than the first. We learned that lesson with the second wave. Let's hope we remember that lesson at the end of the second wave and continue to test at very high levels. I thank you, Professor John, for opening our eyes to the situation, and in particular for revealing convincing details of not just the manipulation, but often the dishonest way in which testing is done in India. No wonder we end up unprepared. And what this means is through our manipulation and our dishonesty, we are also our own worst enemies. If we have a problem, we are at least 50% to blame. Thank you very much for your honesty, Professor John. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.